Hey everyone, Julien from F1 here. We are actually in North Macedonia, Bitola, to visit the new Brainchild factory, and Ralf Groesel is gonna give us a tour. So let's come inside.
Julien, hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you and welcome to Brainchild Manufacturing.
It smells brand new.
It is.
Right? Can you give us a little tour of
I would say
this new secret facility?
I give you the full tour.
Oh,
Let's go.
Thank you. Okay, so Ralf,
Yeah.
what's the difference between the first factory and this factory?
Well, actually, the first factory was never to be intended to be a factory. So we have the laboratory where we started to manufacture because, we had a proof of concept with all the innovation we have at Brainchild. We made it work over there, but we always had the goal in mind that we will move to the manufacturing site, which is the duplication. So we have one hub of innovation and one hub of duplication. And this is just dedicated to make products in the best way possible, of course, with the highest quality as possible.
Mm-hmm. And I've seen quite a lot of people working here. I guess you had to hire a lot of people, probably train them, because I don't think in Macedonia it's not a big account. Like, I've never seen a kite coming from North Macedonia, so I guess you had to train a lot of people.
Yes,
so
correct.
How did it happen? Like, how did you build that team?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was, of course, in phases. So when we started the laboratory, we had just a handful of people, and we focused on the digital printing side, because digital printing on this very high-tech material is very complicated. No one achieved it before and on a mass production scale. So we built the infrastructure for the innovation first, step by step, with just few people. And then once we moved into the duplication phase, which still happened in the laboratory, we hired more people. So right now we have 235 employees, which is definitely quite an improvement from the very beginning. But yeah, as you said, the key goal was to have to first find people with experience in sewing, because no one here in North Macedonia has any direct connection to water sports or to wind-driven sports articles. This is just not there. But on the other side, you don't also have this in Sri Lanka or in China. You know, like you have people coming from different industries. Here we had mainly people coming from the garment industry, so from classical clothing, with years and years of experience. But nevertheless, this product is so much more complicated, so much more sophisticated in comparison, that we needed the time to train the people, to implement the structure, to come up with the right quality control. So it was a huge achievement. Not only building this, planning this, building this, but also like filling it with the technology on one side, but also with the right people on the other hand.
Well, I'm not very experienced in manufacturing, so can you explain me what's going on here?
Over here. Well, actually, it's quite simple. We have two different lines. This line here is the canopy line, where on the other side we have the leading edge and strut line. And as you can see, the ladies are like putting the puzzle together, like from the small variants over there on that side, further down to the bigger pictures, just like panel by panel. And as you can see, this is like all digital printed. I mean, this is like our biggest expertise in what we do. The fabric has been white, now it's colored. And here the reinforcement is being attached to the leading edge side of the canopy panel. And this goes in sequence. Like you have basically step number one, adding one little detail to the panel. And then once that panel is ready, it goes on to the next panel, which is in the phase over here. So it's getting the puzzle together, making sure that it's always like fitting. It is integrated into the sewing line as well. This is like production facility in the world has a different way of putting the stuff together. And we do it, we have raised up tables where we can actually push on the panel which has been created, glued, can directly be pushed onto the sewing machine.
So basically it's gluing, stitching.
And then basically it comes back, exactly. Though it's like kind of a force and back. And that also ensures that there is a consistent communication between, let's say, the entities.
Yeah.
The one entity is sticking it together where the other entity is sewing it together. Work continues. There we have some machine adjustment going on. This is also very, very important. You know, like the sewing machines actually on the mechanical side, It's normally you never change a sewing machine. Once the sewing machine is set it up, you only change the yarn or you adjust it. This is basically what happens over there. That's also extremely important that whenever we have the feeling, the operator has the feeling, okay, something has changed, the yarn tension is not there anymore, or there is too much glue in the sewing machine, which of course happens because it's glued together and then sewn, then we have the mechanic jumping in and adjusting the machine in order to have the perfect quality.
I know, we have a sewing machine in the office, it's always in the repair shop, so I know, I know what
well,
you're talking about.
we have the repair shop coming to us. That makes it easier. The same thing happens over here. You can see, you know, like this is basically, let's say this is the left side of the canopy, here is the right side of the canopy. This is pretty much what happens. It's just like the continuation of the puzzle getting together. And the good thing is that this line here is enough, some detail work. So we have some patches. In this regard, we have like an insignia tape, which is glued to the trailing edge, where then the trailing edge batten and the batten pocket is assembled to. So it's also clear that lady is just responsible for making sure the batten is at the right position and it goes in there. Again, sewing on the other side. Over here we have the automated machines. This is also preparation for trailing edge battens. And here the automated machine is doing the batten, in this regard the batten pocket.
Stitching.
The stitching itself. This is basically, it's being put in there and then on the pedals you're starting the machine. This is basically how the canopy from this point to the start point, this is what it needs to create the canopy.
So the same thing happens for the leading edge on the other side, and then you assemble both.
Exactly. So, but this is the thing. So we call it different products. For us, the leading edge is a product, the strut is a product, the canopy is a product, the bladder is a product, and everywhere we have like the streets where these individual products are being made, and then they will actually be assembled together. Meanwhile, we have also quality control. That's also very important. Before the finished products, like individual products, are actually combined and stitched together, they are checked individually. And this is like the best example over here, because this is an entire, complete, finished canopy, which goes to the quality control at the moment.
This is very weird to see a kite without the leading edge and the struts.
It's like a third of the kite.
It's a parawing.
It's a parawing. It's actually like, it's a parawing. And I think this is also maybe, interesting and nice to understand that this is everything you need for the canopy. You know, that the canopy technically is ready now.
Can you talk us through different QC process along the whole manufacturing?
So QC process starts, of course, with arriving of the raw material. So the process is that we have the raw material coming to us. Normally, depending a little bit on the raw material, but for example, if it's a raw material which goes into the digital printing process, we are checking the raw material on a light table to see any kind of defects, which happens. It happens, you know, like, and we don't want to create waste. So what we are actually doing is we're checking directly after receiving the material if there is a defect. If there is one, we mark it, we cut it out and basically separate it. So that's the first step of quality control. And then after each and every individual step, we have quality checks as well. The most important is before it actually goes into the production line. So on that left side over there, this is basically on the left side, this is where the material comes from the cutting. And then we have one table, a light table as well. And it's very easy. If you have a small panel, it's much easier to detect any kind of mistake if it's in a smaller scale. If it's on a big one, it's really difficult to capture a mistake. But if it's just a leading edge panel, then it's very easy or easier for the lady to detect a certain problem. They mark it, they also do like a pre-preparation, for example, in terms of saying this is panel number 1, panel number 3, so some marking is going on, canopy line is drawn, and then this panel is being stocked together with corresponding leading edge panels, otherwise you could not put it together. And then you have a stack of material, and that stack of material actually goes into the production line. And this is what happens everywhere. So the logic is always
canopy.
Exactly. It's always the same logic. Now this clear, it makes sense not to have
QC of the fabric when it arrives, QC of the different panels at the beginning of the line. Now we see the QC at the end of the line.
End of the line.
For the canopy.
For the canopy.
But you also have it for the leading edge.
Yes, exactly. No, and over there, for example, the ladies are starting to attach the struts to. In this regard, it's basically not to say something wrong. There's like 2 ways of doing it, but depending on the product itself, you have one way where you can actually stick the strut to the canopy and then basically sew it to the leading edge, or the other way around. But what you can actually see over here on the other side is to have the leading edge panels, which also have to go through different phases in terms of adding pigtails for the bridles to be attached, adding reinforcement layers for the valves, doesn't matter for which valve, or the reinforcement layers for the zippers. And this happens in the leading edge itself, or depending on the product, sometimes also in that line. It always depends a little bit on the product and the complexity of the product. So we have like kind of the way of adjusting it, let's put it this way.
And what happens once the kite is fully assembled? What happens in terms of quality control there?
So once we can just go over there. So we have the different phases. So technically it starts over here with the canopy. It goes around. It starts over there with the leading edge and struts. And then they are combined on that table on the other side. Over
on the third line.
On the third line, exactly. And by the end of the third line, you actually already have a nearly finished product. What is not attached is the bridles, but we can actually have a look. So, Julien, what we're doing in here is like the boys and girls are actually inserting the bladders on these tables. This is, of course, necessary step to inflate our product.
Much better.
Well, much better with the bladder than without. Exactly. And besides the bladder, strut, and leading edge, it's also inserting, like for example, the trailing edge buttons. That is something which is super important. Also checking it if there is like, for example, a mismatch in tension. But if you look to the other side, basically this way, you can see that there's like a lot of inflation going on. And this is basically where the real quality control happens. So you have the individual control, but in the end, ultimately, you have the components together. It has to be inflated 2 times 24 hours. If there's any problem, it goes back into the circle of 2 times 24 hours of inflation. And we have also 2 different types of quality levels, like level 1, level 2. And of course, every kite has to pass the first level to achieve level 2. It's a different type of group of people. So it's not the same guys saying like, oh yeah, the kite was great and just pass it on. No. So it's basically these 2 groups are actually checking each other and to make sure that it's worked 100% perfect and that we have more than 4 eyes. So at least we have 8 eyes minimum of checking these products.
Okay. So here is the kite staying inflated? Is it symmetric, twisted?
Yeah.
Is there some yarns going out
Yeah.
or some stitching that are not well made
Yeah.
or stuff like that?
Yeah, and it's like, like it's a complicated product. We try to make it look as good as possible in every single way, not only optically, but also the love to detail. So everything has to be trimmed, everything has to be checked according to our specification, especially when it comes to the bridles, like how's the manufacturing of the bridle, as you said, symmetry of the kite itself, symmetry of the bridle. Yeah, we're just going through everything bit by bit to making sure that it then can be passed on to the packing stage, which is kind of like the end of what we are doing. If it's packed, it's shipped, it's yours. Here in Europe, we have some big advantages when it comes to the understanding of what economically and ecologically means. Like this is definitely a different kind of mentality and philosophy within what we have created here as Europe, which is very good. I think that's something quite positive. But on the other hand, of course, we want to be the most innovative production facility. That means we have been working not only on the digital printing, but we have been working on the technology side of it. We have the ProWeld technology, which is welding instead of sewing. So that means that these individual panels, yeah, exactly, which is the leading edge panels, is what we see here. I mean, you always see, the end consumer basically see this webbing, which is, by the way, 100% recycled PET from Germany. This is also very important because
the buckles of the bags, the webbing of the bags themselves, the main fabric, I think, also the main
components of it. Components, for example,
100%,
not 100%, because then you have some components being 50% from recycled PET, but also we have for the bladder, we have bio-based bladder material. So everything what is possibly or technologically possible, we try to do in-house. We always try to combine not only one thing we can sell, we really try to make a difference, and it makes a huge difference. I mean, these webbings, for example, are so much more expensive than just a random webbing you can buy everywhere in the world, in China or in Asia. But this is like a certified 100% recycled PET. So, but ProWeld is actually the seam underneath over here. It's face to face. And then there's a pattern of glue behind, and then actually these ones are stitched on because we cannot glue them on. And the combination of these 3 different layers, that is the ProWeld. That is the technology.
The difference between a normal stitching and the ProWeld, you will say stiffer responsiveness in the kites?
It's stiffer because what you actually do is you have these 2 layers and then you're bounding them together like this 3-dimensionally. And so the material is not able to move against each other. So whenever you have like a bias force, like a force which goes diagonal, then the force is running directly through the ProWeld and just gives the kite a better response and rebound. So you bound and rebound. So it's very important to understand that the kite has to have flex patterns. If it would be just steel, it would not even turn. So it has to have a certain deformation on the wingtip area, and then it's the question like how much does the material wants to go back in the original shape, and that is the rebound. And that is something which works extremely well with our technology. Is a huge advantage because we can use materials which are having the best price to value ratio. We do not need necessarily to have expensive laminates. We can achieve the same flight characteristics, but with better price to value ratio.
Cool. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Congratulations. And really looking forward to see these kites on the beach now.
No problem. We can fly them straight later on the beach directly.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Cheers.